In this video, you are going to learn tricky Stafford Gambit. This gambit is full of traps and there is a very high chance that your opponent is going to fall in one of these traps. It is a rare chess opening and most people do not prepare against it. And even if your opponent knows the theory, at the end of the video, I will tell you what kind of position you will get if they know all the theory. So let's start. Stafford Gambit starts with e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, and now your opponent will play knight cross e5. And if you want to play Petrov defense, you play d6 and then knight cross e4. This is known as Petrov defense. But here we want to play knight c6. This move is known as the Stafford Gambit. White will almost always take the pawn. If it does not take the pawn and goes back, then you can simply take on e4 and material is equal. And most of the time your opponent will play knight cross e6. And now we play d cross e6. In this opening, black has sacrificed one pawn, but in return you will get attacking chances. We are attacking opponent's e4 pawn and white has mainly two ways to defend it. White can play d3 or knight c3. First, we look at d3. And here we play bishop to c5. We want to target the f2 pawn. Our threat is we are going to play knight g4 and we are going to attack this f2 pawn. And white has mainly two ways to defend it. White can play bishop e2 and guard this square. Or white can also play h3 to guard g4 square. First we look at bishop e2. And now we play pawn to h5. We insist on playing knight to g4. We want to prepare knight g4 and attack the f2 pawn. And here the most natural move in this position is to go short castle. Most of the time you will see this move in your game. And now you play knight to g4. Threat, we want to bring our queen to h4 and simply checkmate him on the h2 square. In this position, according to Leach's database, around 41% of the time your opponent is going to play h3. If you see this move in your game, it means they have fallen into our trap. Now instead of retreating this knight, we play queen d6. Our threat is to checkmate on the h2 square. After h cross g4, we play h cross g4. We are still threatening on the checkmate on h2 square. And your opponent plays g3. He tries to block it. And 4,178 people have fallen into this trap. Now you play queen cross g3 checkmate. White cannot play f cross g3 because our bishop is pinning this pawn. So you win the game in 10 moves. In this position, instead of playing h cross g4, white can also play bishop cross g4. After h cross g4, and your opponent plays a tricky move, e5. You cannot capture this pawn because then white will play rook e1 and win your queen. So here you simply play queen g6. Your opponent will play d4, attacking this bishop, but we don't have to defend it. We play h cross g3. We are threatening a checkmate on the g2 square. Your opponent plays g3. And now we play one more attacking move, bishop to g4. We are threatening the queen, so white plays f3 and blocks it. We come back. And now we are threatening queen cross g3. So white plays king h2 and protects it. We take bishop cross c2. We are attacking the queen and queen also need to defend this pawn. So he plays queen d2. And now we go long castle. And if you look at the Uncle Stockfish, black is completely winning in this position. In this position also, instead of playing h3, your opponent can play bishop cross g4 right away. He wants to chop the knight away. So we play h cross g3. Our threat is queen h4 and then we checkmate on the h2 square. So he plays g3. And now we simply play queen f6. Our intention is to play queen g6 and then go queen h5 and try to checkmate on the h2 square. Or if they play knight c3, then we simply continue with queen g6. Our threat is to go queen h5, we want to play bishop e6, we want to go long castle, and for one pawn, black has attacking chances and black has full compensation for the pawn. If we go back, then in this position, instead of playing bishop e2 to guard the g4 square, your opponent can also play h3. And now we surprise our opponent with bishop cross f2 check. First piece sacrifice. After king cross f2, now comes the second piece sacrifice. Knight cross e4 check. Your opponent cannot take our knight because of queen cross d1. So he has two choices. He can go to g1 or he can go to e1. If he goes king e1, then after queen h4 check, king e2, queen f2, it's a checkmate. So the king will go to g1 and now you play queen d4 check. After king to h2, if you want, then you can play queen e5 check, king g1, queen d4 check. You can take the perpetual check. It's a draw. Or if you want to continue the game and take some risk, then after king h2, you can play knight f2, forking the rook and the queen. And here the most natural move is queen e2 check. After bishop to e6, your opponent will play bishop e3, forking the queen and the knight. And here first you play check. After king to g1, and now you simply play queen cross b2. You let your opponent take this knight and in return you will get this rook. And black is completely fine in this position. In the next move you can go long castle and your opponent's pieces are still stuck on the king side. Now let's look at what happens if your opponent defends the e4 pawn with knight to c3. After knight to c3, we attack in the same way. We develop our bishop to c5. And according to Leach's database, the most popular move in this position is bishop to c4. And now we play knight to g4. We continue with our plan. White will play short castling. And now we play queen to h4. Our queen, knight and bishop, all of these three pieces are attacking the opponent's king. We are threatening queen cross h2 checkmate. So white plays h3. And now we play knight cross f2. And now we play knight cross f2. We are attacking the queen. So white plays queen f3. We play knight cross h3. It's a double check. Our bishop and our knight are giving a check to the white's king. After king h2, we play knight f2 check. White will play king g1 and 20,326 people have fallen into this trap. Now we play queen h1 and it's a checkmate. If your opponent is a careful player, then he will notice this threat. He will notice that we are trying to target the f2 pawn. So he will play pawn to h3. And now we play queen d4, threatening on f2 again. White will play queen f3. And we play bishop to e6. Our intention is to go long castling. After d3, we go long castle. White plays bishop e3. And now we play queen b4. Now in this position, 54% of the time your opponent will play bishop cross e5. And then they have fallen into one of our traps. Instead of recapturing this bishop, we play queen cross b2, forking the rook and the knight. After king d2, we simply take this rook. And black is completely winning thanks to this weak king. And if your opponent knows the theory, then here he is going to play long castle. Now we play bishop cross e3 check, queen cross e3, queen a5. Threatening on a2, white will play king b1 and you simply bring your last piece into the game. And your plan is very simple. You want to bring more pieces on the queen side. You want to play pawn to c5, then rook d6, then rook a6 and try to target the opponent's queen side. Now let's look at the critical variation of this gambit. What happens if your opponent knows all the theory? Here your opponent will play pawn to c3. Your opponent will not rush to go short castle because he knows that you will play knight g4, queen h4 and try to checkmate the king. So he will keep his king in the center for some time. But we continue in the same way. We play knight g4. He will play d4, blocking our bishop. And we don't care about this bishop. We immediately go queen h4, threatening on the f2 square. After g3, we come back and again threaten the f2 square. Your opponent will play f3. And now here you have to remember this key move. You do not retreat your knight and defend it. You play pawn to h4. You sacrifice the whole knight. After f cross g4, you play h cross g3. And now in this position, there are three main moves. The most popular move in this position is d cross c5. It is played around 26% of the time. And if they play this move, then you win the game. You play queen f2 check, king to d1, and you play bishop cross g4. This bishop is pinned and we put more pressure on it. In the next move, you will play rook d8 check and win the queen. So black is completely winning. Around 24% of the time, your opponent will play rook f1, protecting f2 square and attacking your queen. And here you simply sacrifice your queen. You play g cross h2. After rook cross f6, g cross f6. You want to make this queen. So white will play bishop f3. You promote your pawn to the queen. After bishop cross h1, rook takes, king d2. You simply take opponent's queen and then you play bishop cross g4 check. And after a move like king c2, you simply play bishop d6. And according to Uncle Stockfish, black has winning advantage. You have one more pawn and in the next move, you can just go long castle, bring your rook into the game and you have bishop pair. And opponent's pieces are stuck on the queen side. So black is completely winning. And around 22% of the time, your opponent will play the best move. The best move in this position is bishop to e3. If you see this move, then it means your opponent is very well prepared. And now we continue with rook cross h2. Your opponent will play rook g1, attacking our pawn, and it is important to defend this pawn. You will play queen h4, and your opponent will play d cross c5, and you simply play bishop e6. Objectively, white has a winning advantage, but black has lots of tricks in this position. Your threat is to play rook to d8 to attack the queen. You are also threatening g2 pawn check. And sometimes you sacrifice this rook for the bishop and then play bishop cross g4. Although white has advantage in this position, but it is difficult for your opponent to play all the accurate moves. So you have practical chances. If your opponent is below 1600, then there is no way he is going to find all of these accurate moves. So you will have very good chances of trapping your opponent in your opening preparation. And one more piece of advice. Don't use this opening against a grandmaster. If you like this video, then please subscribe and share this video. Thank you very much for watching it.